guys, how are you doing today? I'm doing pretty fantastic. Thank you for asking. Today's story is because it's always a story time, of course, because this is my channel of like vlogs and story time and now Twitch clips. But anyway, this is a story time I've been kind of putting off for a little bit because I'm still not recovering, but trying to, I guess, sort out what happened. Because it's not something that, you know, happens every day. And you may be like, hey, what are you talking about? Anyway, so I'll set the scene. I'm gonna have to change some of the story so I don't dox people, but I was at a place, and it was a cool place. It was a nice place, a nice relaxing place. I was at a place and I heard honking from said place, and I was like, oh, you know, it's LA, people honk. And I just kept hearing honking, and you know, it was an average day, you know, it was sunny, I think. No, it wasn't. I don't know. LA's been having like weird cloud. I hear honking continuous, and it wasn't like a wah, 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 wah. Like, it wasn't like angry LA honk, if you know what I mean. It was just like a beep, 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 beep. So I looked out of a window of a place and saw a fire at an apartment building. It just was on fire. And I was like, oh, okay. So I went back to what I was doing for, you know, keep in mind, I know you're like, okay, what the hell? Just wait, you know the moment where you're doing something and you're just like, oh, nice. And you go back and you're like, oh my God, it was like that. So, but it just, in the span of like a point of a millisecond, like I looked and I was like, oh, fire. Oh, a fire. So without thinking, without telling anyone, I just put on my shoes and I just bust out the door. I just start running and I start yelling. I'm like, is everybody out of the house? Is everybody out of the house? Apartment, whatever, same thing. No doxing. It could have been a house, could have been an apartment, who knows? And I'm on the phone with 911 and I'm just like, they're like, oh, it was 911. That's the emergency. And I was like, there's an apartment. It just got on fire. I'm trying to get everybody out. And they're like, okay, we'll dispatch you to the fire department. I'm like, why me? When I saw initially the fire, I called, and so they put me on hold, and then as I was like, you know, running to this place, that's when they picked up and they're like, oh, it's the fire department. I start running laps around the apartment. I'm banging on all the windows and everything. I'm like, get the fire, there's a fire. And I'm like, you know, and I'm running, I'm like, is everybody out? Because people started coming out and it had just started. Like, it wasn't like a little, like, obviously the horns that were being honked were to be like, oh my God, hey, everybody that lives in this apartment, come outside please, because it's fire. Finally the fire department answers, like, oh, what's the address? And I was like, oh, I don't know. And so I was like, so then I managed to figure it out, and then I told them, and they're like, okay, we'll be there, we're on our way. And I was like, okay, it's this floor, it's this, it's this. And I was like, it just started. They're like, okay. And so then hung up, and I run to the front and I'm like, is everybody out? And everyone's like, just standing there. Right? They're just standing there like, yeah, I think so. Wow. They're just watching the fire. And I was like, okay. And they're like, should somebody call the police, like 911? No one's calling 9. I was like, oh my God. I was like, I already did it. I already took care of it. Like, the thing is, this is what I learned. Nobody reacts. You know, like the bystander effect? No one was doing anything. They were just standing watching the fire. And I was like, what is wrong with you people? Anyway, we're standing there and there's this girl that I'm talking to we'll call her Eve. So I'm talking to Eve and she's like, oh my God, she's like, where did you come from? And I was like, I ran across the street. I was like, I just heard honking and I didn't know. And so then all of a sudden we hear a woman screaming and everybody goes quiet. And we're like, oh my God, there's someone in there. Me and Eve look at each other and I'm like, there's a window around back. We can go in there. Not go in, but like, you know, get her out. So me and Eve were like running, and so we go to the back window. I figure out which apartment it is, and I just start banging on the window, and I'm like, come over here, come over here, come to this window. We just hear screaming, help me, help me, help me. And I was like, so I look at Eve and I was like, do we break the window? And she's like, I don't know. And I was like, okay, let's see, let's just run it back to the front and see if like the fire department's here. Nothing. Everybody's just like, what do we do? Like looking around the fire, and I was like, oh my God. And I was like, okay, back to the window. So we run over and we were like, maybe it's unlocked? And it wasn't. The window was just a locked, closed window. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, Kate, it was the adrenaline. I promise you it wasn't. I don't know how this stuff happens. So then, you know, in my caveman brain of thinking, I guess, I was like, okay, well, if the window won't open and we don't have anything to break it with, I'll just pull the window out of the building. So I did. I grabbed it. I don't know how to explain it. I grabbed the frame and I just pulled it out of the building. And Eve was like, what the f? Like, just, but when I pulled out, the smoke was, it was already in the apartment. And I'm like moving the blinds to the side and I'm like, come to the window, you couldn't see jack diddly. You could, if you were like this, you could not see your hand. The smoke was already just, I don't know if the fire was in the apartment. You know, caveman was like, ooga booga, we gotta go get her. I'm like, hey, yo, like the woman part of my brain was like, no, dude, like no, like you don't know this apartment. And the smoke when it came out, like, oh, it was so thick, and not like the good kind of thick, like not like the yummy thick, like the, ooh, this is too much kind of thick, you know? We turn on our flashlights, we're like, come to the window, like breathing in this smoke, like, come to the window, couldn't see anything, and then it goes quiet. And we were like, what do you do, right? We were like, run to the front. Turns out that when everybody, you know, I guess they were all standing there for long enough to the point where they're like, oh, maybe we should do something. They all ran into their apartments, grabbed their little, you know, Brita filters that everybody in LA has. They all came out with their Brita filters and they put out the fire with all of their like imagine like 10 people with Brita filters. So we run around, and then as they put it out, a man had ran in and like towards the door, I guess. I don't know if he knew the layout of the apartment. I don't know, but pulled out an 80-year-old woman who couldn't walk. So that's why she couldn't come to the bedroom, which makes a whole lot of sense and definitely wouldn't be able to get her out the window. She has soot all over her face and everywhere. And so Eve runs over to her and is like, oh my God, are you okay? Oh my God, are you okay? And she's like hugging her, and the woman's just coughing and coughing. She's like, I was gonna die. I was gonna die. I was gonna die. So I went over because I was like, hey, I can help. So I went over and like, so we were holding her up, and then all of the police and all of the ambulances and all of the fire trucks come. After we put out the fire, and after we got the woman out, and after we made sure the whole place was evacuated, it was already done. Like we were good. But the thing is too, we don't know where the fire started. We don't know if it was inside of underneath the building. We don't know. We didn't know anything. What was annoying though was they get there and they just ignore all of us. They just start, and I understand if there's like a fire, you got to go into action. There was no more fire. They got there, no more fire. Firemen? Two things. One, they all have a little mustache. And by little, I mean very big and bushy. But like all of them, every single one. And number two, why are they all like 6'8"? I felt like a teeny little mouse, and there's just, ooh, fireman, ooh, fireman, ooh, fireman. And I was like, damn. So this whole time, holding this poor woman up, and she's like, I don't understand. She's like, I was just watching what did she say? It was like she said it was like a Spanish soap opera or something. She's like, I don't even speak Spanish, but I was just watching it and eating my dinner, and then I just smelled gas. And I don't know. I don't even know what happened. And so we were holding her up, and she was coughing, and she started burping, and me, I was like, oh my God, she's gonna throw up. And you know, I fear vomit. So I was like, I was like trying to be supportive, but also, you know, she couldn't walk. All these firemen are just everywhere. And I was like, hey, there's like, they took it, they put it out. And so finally I'm standing there. I'm like, where's an ambulance? Like, where's like an actual, like, where are the, like, what are they called? Paramedics. I was like, where are the paramedics? And a fireman was walking by. He's like, oh, you need an ambulance? And I look at him, I'm like, yeah. She was in there. And he goes, she was in there? She had soot, like, out of her nose, like, everywhere. And he's like, oh, yeah, come this way. So he just, you know, massive strides, because he's, like, 7 feet tall, just towards, like, this fire engine that apparently was the ambulance. And so me and Eve are, like, trying to, like, slowly help her walk over. And she's like, I'm sorry, I don't walk good, and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so they're trying to get her in the seat, right? And they start speaking to her in Spanish, and they're like, oh, sit in the chair, but in Spanish. I don't really speak Spanish. I did in high school, now I don't, because my brain is one brain cell. Anyway, she's not doing what they're saying because she doesn't speak Spanish either. And so me and Eve are looking at each other, and we're like, oh, go ahead and sit in the seat. So we're speaking English to her. So she tries, and she's having a hard time getting up. And so they keep speaking in Spanish to her. And so finally Eve goes, she doesn't speak Spanish. And they go, well, then what does she speak? I hope y'all can imagine how deadpan I said this, because this is like, I was holding her hands, and I look up and I go, she speaks English. The whole conversation we were having with her was all English. They could hear that, like we were saying, oh yeah, she's this and that, she was in the fire, this and that. It's the fact that they immediately jumped to she doesn't speak English. It made me so angry. So we're like, okay, he's gonna take you over there, he's gonna check you out. And she's like, okay, my son is supposed to be coming home from work, like, and so we're like, okay, we'll find him. And then Eve is like, this is crazy, like, I'm so glad you were here. And I was like, yeah, I'm glad I, you know, came over, like, running over. Everybody that was with, not a clue what was going on. So then we're standing on the sidewalk, the firemen are just slowly putting their stuff back, and this big dude, right, random dude, like Nike shorts, t-shirt, flip-flops, just running over. He runs up to me and Eve and this guy, like I think it was Eve's roommate, I'm not sure, runs over and he goes, I saw who did it. And we're like, what? I saw a dude pouring. I saw a dude walk across the street, had a gas canister. I thought it was really weird. And then I saw the fire and I chased them in the car, but they got away. They didn't have a license plate, but I saw who did. I took pictures of them. And me and Eve were like, excuse me? Turns out we got, the police involved and everything, had to get an arsonist come over because apparently it was targeted, potentially, either just out of just someone liking fire or someone trying to actually murder this 80-year-old lady because there's no way she could have gotten out because it was like in the front of the area for, yeah. Isn't that crazy? People are so, freaked up, They started interviewing everybody and asking everybody questions, and me and Eve were standing there and they're like, okay, so we see these windows are broken, and we're like, no, like when people were walking by, they were trying to get, attention. And then Eve goes, oh yeah, so around the building, she pulled the window out of the building, and these two firemen were like looked, and I was like, it was locked and I couldn't get it, so I pulled it out of the building. They got everything handled, and Eve and I were like, hey, like if you ever need anything, just let me know. Like we exchanged stuff, and then I was like, came back over and I was like, hey guys, you're never gonna guess what happened. And they were like, what happened? And then I told them, and they were like, Kate, what the hell? And I was like, so technically I was a first responder, which is something that I would never have thought would have happened. But, anyway, the point of the story is life is scary and things can happen in an instant. But also too, now that I've like had time, a lot of time, this happened a long time ago, but I needed to like process it. Cause the thing is too, is like I said, I didn't have any adrenaline. I mean, I obviously probably had some, but it wasn't like my heart was pounding and I was like, oh my God, what do I gotta do? It was so weird because it was just like, I gotta get everybody out. I have to make sure everybody's out. I have to warn everybody. I have to make sure everybody's good. Like my brain wasn't put out the fire. It wasn't, oh my God. It was call the cops, get everybody out. That was the only thing I could think of. But now that I've like had time to process it, probably should purchase a fire extinguisher, and learn how to use one, because that would probably become maybe handy one day. I don't know. I was in shock for sure. Cause like after it happened, I started calling everybody and I was like, you'll never guess what just happened. I was like, you'll never guess. Because it was things that like, and it actually kind of messed with me a little bit because I have nightmares like that. And so then for like a while, I'd go in and out of, what's it called? Depersonalization, I think, where I wasn't sure if things were actually happening or if they were not actually, because I'd have nightmares and I'd wake up. And what happened was kind of like a nightmare and it didn't feel real. And then, anyway. So if y'all ever experience anything where you see like something happening, whether it's like a fire or a robbery, for one, keep yourself safe, but, take action by calling the police or, taking safety, just doing whatever you can. Just do not stand there and do nothing. Like it blew my mind that like they were all just standing in front of the fire like it was a bonfire, being like, oh, this sucks. Like, but also too, like, take care of yourself. And, if no one else is doing anything, it's up to you, but also too, like, just be safe. I could have gone in, but that wouldn't have been safe. And then they would have to get 2 people out, But anyway, that's my story. And I hope you enjoyed, even though it's kind of a messed up story, but, woohoo, coot to the rescue. I didn't tell my mom this because I knew she'd get mad. It's been so long and I haven't told her. I told Gage, I told him not to tell her mom though, because my mom would be like, oh, Caitlin, and I'd be like, but yeah, I don't know if they ever caught the person who did it. I have no clue because I have not been back in a while. But anyway, I'm gonna go. Hope you guys have fantastic, helpful stuff, and I will see you tomorrow. Okay, bye. Be safe. Okay, bye. Drink your water. Okay, bye.